Hello student, welcome to the another video section of object oriented programming using C++ for the second year BCA students. On the previous video class, we learn about what is programming language, what are the different aspects of programming language. So simply, what is programming language? Today's section is all about why there are so many programming languages there in computer or in the computing world. So basically, as you know that a programming language is a set of commands, instructions, and as well as other syntax tools used to build or create a program. As you know that program is nothing, it is called set of valid instruction which can be performed or which can be created for a specific function or specific task. So that's why your programming language is nothing. It is basically called a set of commands or instructions and as well as the other syntax tools used to build or create a program. So before starting this session, one question arises why there are so many programming languages there or why there are so many programming languages used in computing world for developing or build a program. So basically, as you know that over the years or as the year have changed, so has the technology we use that is also changed. For example, अगर हम लोग 1970 में या 1980 में या 1990 में जो टेक्नोलॉजी यूज कर रहे थे आज के डेट में हम लोग उस टेक्नोलॉजी को यूज नहीं कर रहे इट मींस computer does not use that type of hardware which were used during the time of 80s 90s or 70s. So that's why according to the requirement if a system can upgrade its own hardware so the software is also changed. So that's why not only has the hardware running our software being upgraded, but the language we use to design our program are being updated as well as improved. So according to the standardization of the hardware, we must require certain software or certain programming to build the software to meet the basic functionality of the upgraded or improved hardware. While the change has been for the better with our productivity never being or never having been higher. Because in 70s or 60s or 80s उस टाइम पे हम लोग जो प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज यूज कर रहे थे आज के डेट में हम लोग उस प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज का एक एडवांस पेट या एक एडवांस पर्टिकुलरली लाइक फॉर्म को हम लोग यूज करते हैं. So in 70s C programming was widely implemented or C programming was developed during 1970s. आज के डेट में भी हम लोग उसको वाइडली इंप्लीमेंट करते हैं. But current particularly date or current scenario says that the modern programming language is available with our computing programming code. So that's why another aspects why there are so many programming language as hardware evolves or normally hardware change, the new languages are developed as old ones will need to be completely rewritten or recreate to meet the industry standard. So generally अगर हम लोग ये बोलेंगे programming language must be changed according to the upgradation of the hardware. Suppose we use Windows operating system. अगर हम लोग early 90s में Windows operating system को use कर रहे थे, that particular version is called 3.1 or 95 like a version. आज के डेट में हम लोग Windows 10 यूज कर रहे हैं widely. So to meet the subsequent, like you can say the hardware requirement, it must develop the software according to the function. So that's why every programming language aims to solve a particular problem. And you know that each and every program, like C is normally called a procedure programming language, C++ is basically called object-oriented programming language, and current generation programming language like Java, Python, these are normally truly object-oriented programming language. That's why every program or programming language aims to solve a particular problem. Each and every particular programming language to aim or to solve a subsequent problem according to its requirement. So more than one language might be able to solve the same problem, but each will approach it differently. Simple example, C programming can done certain particularly problems in different way, whereas C++ also develop or design or create that type of programs in different way. So that's why more than one programming or more than one programming language might be able to solve the same problem, but each will approach it differently. And you know that C programming have its limitation according to the according to your syllabus जो आप normally first year में पढ़े थे. So your C is normally, or C does not have any concept of class or class concept or object concept, because it is basically called structural or structure oriented programming language or procedural oriented programming language. But new generation programming languages like C++, Java and so on so thing are normally completely based on object oriented programming system. ये section हम लोग coming particularly part में पढ़ेंगे. So what is object oriented programming? This can be covered in the later section or later part of your particular book. So different programming languages are designed for different type of programs. So if there are so many programs available with available with the computer, so maximum number of different particular programming languages are designed for different type of programs. So some programs can be implemented for the basic purpose, some are for advanced purpose, so on so. And these are particularly like some major difference in programming languages. And you know that there are so many programming languages which is available with us. So there are certain particular differences between programming languages. The differences are, first is called legibility, that is called readability and maintainability. And second one is basically called performance. According to the performance, the one program may differ from another program. And third one is called the available libraries. The like you can say the predefined particular file structure or predefined programming structure is available with the library subroutine concepts. And the fourth one is the most important, that is normally called the secondary. So we just focus about these particularly 4 points. So first of all, what is legibility and maintainability? Basically, some languages are easier to human being to read, which makes it easier for one program to collaborate on another program's code. So the most important thing is like basically called the readability and as well as the maintainability. Or you have to read properly and maintain properly. So some language that particular allows the programmer to write the same code or program in many different ways, but the programs or codes might not be immediately clear to another reader. Such a program may be convenient to write, but different but difficult for someone else to understand and as well as edit. As you know that, I think you are not you are normally learning C programming or C language in your first year. So it is very easy to create a C programming because you just focus about that, or you just some of the particular sections which were covered in your first. अगर मैं वेरी फर्स्ट क्लास में आपको C++ का एक प्रोग्राम दूंगा, लाइक C में जो प्रोग्राम हम लोग बनाए थे उसी को बेस करके या उसी प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करने के लिए और एक मैं प्रोग्राम दूंगा, so it may be readability because it is in a high level programming language. But that particular statement which is related with the subsequent program, that not completely understood by the subsequent particularly programmer or the user. So that's why basically some programs that allows the programmer to write the same code or program in many different ways, but the program's purpose might not be immediately clear to the other way. So in this particular, the main difference is that the structure of a particularly programming language may differ from another structure of a programming language, although the like concept or the particularly the problem which is arise with that, it may be similar or it may be same. The next point says that it is called the performance. So your performance is nothing. Some languages are interpreted and some are compiled. As you know that there are two different type of translator programs there. One thing is called interpreter, another is called compiler. And compiler is basically called a group translator, and interpreter is basically called a line by line translator. So a compiler program must be processed by a preprocessor, compiler and linker before it can be executed by the computer. As you know that basically there are two type of languages there. One thing is called programming language, another thing is called scripting language. Programming language is normally, or the example of the programming language is called C, C++, Java, Python and so on. Okay. And the like scripting language is basically called HTML, PHP, JSP and so on. Most of the programming languages having or doing two subsequent particularly stage or two subsequent stage of like executing the program. First of all, it should be compiled, and after that it can be interpreted. In C programming, first of all, we should compile the file because the extension of the C programming is called .c. After compilation, the program, it normally creates the .o file, that is called the object file. And while executing the subsequent program, another file is available that is called .exe file, that is called the executable. And this can be done by the help of compiler and as well as interpreter both, because it is a combined compiler interpreter. But in the case of scripting language, there is actually no compilation mode is there, or there is no compiler there. It can be only interpreted by the help of certain web browser. Like there are lots of web browsers available with that, like Internet Explorer, Google, like Google Chrome, and so on. So Mozilla Firefox, so on. So basically, your programming language is compiled and as well as interpreted both, but your scripting language is only interpreted. So that's why compiler is normally whenever we compile that particular program, either in C or any other programming language, first of all, it having the debugging process, and after that it can be converting into the object file, and after that it is finally executed. So compiled program usually perform better than the interpreted program because the language which are normally implemented with that, or while coding a subsequent program, it must be in a high level programming language, and that should be converting into the machine equivalent code, or you can say the object code, that is called the intermediate code in between that. So that's why compiler or compiled program usually perform better than the interpreted program, because first of all, it normally whenever the compiler is used for compiling a subsequent program, it must be converting in that or convert into the like you can see the intermediate code or object file, and before converting the subsequent file, it must be debugging, means it must be error free or it normally 0% error having the subsequent particular. But in the case of interpreter, there is no compilation process there. And the scripting part is basically called converting directly to the executable mode. That's why if your particular code having certain error, so it can be reflected on during or reflected on the execution or the execution process. So, for instance, like C++ like programming languages that compile to very fast machine code. Because after compilation, it normally creates a machine code, that's why through which the system can be or the computer can be easily interact. Because as you know that system only understood one language, that is called machine language. But on the other side, interpreted language programs are run by software called interpreter, which execute the program's instruction without first compiling, then particularly to the machine code or the machine level code. So interpreter is normally interpret the subsequent, means retranslating the subsequent state. That's why according to the particular performance, basically the language which are interpreter and as well as compiled. So some programming language related to the interpreted or some particular part is called compiled. Sorry. And the third option is called available libraries. And you know that when you start a new programming or new project with the programming by the help of programming language, we do not want write the function for common tasks like calculating square roots, finding the first occurrence of the character and so on. For this reason, nearly every programming language provides a set of standard libraries that is normally called the header file, which is available with the C programming of common functions. Programmers may prefer a language because of the libraries it provides. As you know that in C programming, हम लोग C में क्या करते थे? First of all, when you develop a program, सबसे पहले हम लोग लिखते थे hash include stdio.h, and that particular header file is basically called library subroutines. Means it normally contains the predefined functions and as well as keyword related codes. So whenever we define printf and scanf or int or gap or you can say like float, it does not actually require to like create that particular code. मतलब int float gap या printf scanf get ch या clr str function जो भी हम लोग यूज करते थे, उसके लिए हम लोग को कोई कोड लिखने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ता, because that all codes are available with a particular library that is normally called the header file. So in C, there are certain header file concepts there. As you know that stdio.h, console input output .h, there is conio.h, string.h, so many header files are there. Like in C++ also having certain header files like iostream, that is called input output stream header file instead of using stdio, like conio.h, string.h, so on. But advanced programming language, like you can say the new generation programming language, does not contain any header file. Like Java type of programming does not contain any header file. Rather than it can normally focus about the package. Package is nothing. It is one type of folder which can contain more than one particular file system, that is called the meta concept. So that's why every individual programming language must having its own library or own library functions or own library subroutines. That's why it is the major difference between like one program with another program in the case of the availability of the languages. And the last particularly point in the list, that is for security. Not all languages lend themselves to write code. For instance, some languages place restriction on what operations can be performed on various types of data. And language may also place limit on mutability, that is basically called the changeability, the ability of the data object to change state. Basically, when you develop a program, और हम लोग जब एक प्रोग्राम को डेवलप करते हैं to making a software that should be interact with a particularly hardware. So the most concerned particularly term which is used nowadays, or you can say the computer, that is called security. So every individual program having its own security while developing the subsequent program, but in this case, it can perform or operation can be performed on the various types of data. If you know that there are certain limitation of the data type like integer, float. Just take it particular these two data types, int and float. हम लोग ये जानते हैं integer data type या int data type always actually store whole numbers, that is you can say only the integral part, say 10 20 30 like that. But on the other side float आपका क्या करता है, जैसे कि it can support the integral and as well as the floating, means 10.2 10.25 like that. So if you store a particular value that is called the floating value or the real number value that is called 10.2 in integer type, it never supports. That's why there are certain security concerns there with the subsequent data type. So every individual data type which is used with the programming language having its own range or own limitation. In this manner, a programming language may be restrict the use of subsequent particular value while executing that program. So that's why every individual language having or like also having place limits of readability, the ability of data object to change its state. So every individual program which are normally designed or developed for a specific task that must having or that's particularly focused about the concerned task. So that's why there are certain security concerns related to that. I think all of you watch this video because it is the pre-section of object-oriented programming language. जैसे कि हम लोग सी प्रोग्रामिंग पढ़े थे उससे पहले एक प्री सेक्शन पढ़े थे व्हाट इज प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज so and so thing like that. It's just a simple video which is related with object oriented programming, but before actually focus about the object oriented programming, what are the pre format there, like what is programming language, there are why so many programming languages are there, or what are the different type of programming languages are there. So I hope you go through this video, and whenever we make a particularly doubt clearing class, if you have certain doubts regarding this video or the previous video, we can discuss about that. Thank you. Keep watching.